I know how deeply you, the entire nation, and I think I may say the whole world, sympathize with me in the irreparable loss we've all suffered.
The doors were closed. The senior royals had been summoned without explanation. Then King Charles entered carrying a red dispatch box and a proclamation bearing the Great Seal. What followed was not a routine announcement, nor a symbolic honor. In a decision that immediately altered the balance of the royal family, the king formally named Princess Anne the first royal of Britain, placing his sister above every other working royal in matters of national duty and crown continuity. Before we go deeper into what this really means for the royal family, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single update. Charles knew everyone understood what was coming. Shortly before noon, he had ordered Anne, William, Catherine, Camilla, Edward, and Sophie into an emergency Crown Council at Buckingham Palace. A Crown Council was a closed meeting used when the monarch needed immediate agreement. Their telephones were surrendered outside. The doors were secured. Every aide was dismissed. Nobody yet knew how far that authority reached. The silence deepened as Charles opened the dispatch box, the sovereign's locked case for state papers. He removed a proclamation bearing the Great Seal, the mark proving a royal order carried authority, and began reading. Anne would control royal operations, ceremonial continuity, national representation, and emergency decisions, whenever he could not act. Anne did not smile. She gripped the table, looked at her brother, and asked what this title could do to their family. Charles held her gaze but did not soften. The Princess Royal had been chosen because clarity, he said, could no longer be postponed. Camilla removed her glasses. She set them beside the document and asked why she had not been consulted. The Queen Consort understood immediately. In operational matters, Anne now stood ahead of her. This was not procedure. It was trust. William leaned forward and examined the pages. The prince saw handwritten notes, private signatures, and months of revisions from constitutional advisors, experts who guide the monarch on royal authority without crossing political limits. This had not been prepared overnight. Charles had planned it secretly. Catherine watched William's expression harden, then steadied herself. Sophie exchanged a glance with Edward. The trusted confidant said nothing, and he lowered his eyes. Anne remained standing, refusing to touch the proclamation. Camilla stayed seated as everyone else rose. Her final words cut through the room. The decree had not strengthened the family, she told Charles. It had revealed exactly whom he trusted and whom he did not. But the title itself was only the beginning, because behind the king's decision stood three people with very different ideas of loyalty, sacrifice, and who truly deserved to stand closest to the crown. To the public, the proclamation appeared to elevate one woman. Inside the palace, it exposed the private burdens of four. Anne saw duty without reward. Charles saw protection against uncertainty. William saw a dangerous change in the path toward his future reign. Camilla saw something more personal, a declaration that, when pressure reached its highest point, the king had placed his faith not in his wife, but in the sister who had never left his side. Anne had spent decades doing the work others avoided. The Princess Royal had accepted exhausting tours, difficult engagements, and responsibilities that brought little praise. Her title described the monarch's eldest daughter, but her importance came from something simpler. She never treated duty as a performance. She arrived, endured, and continued. That discipline made her valuable. It also made her dangerous to anyone who believed influence should come from closeness rather than service. Charles understood that better than anyone. He and Anne had grown up beneath the same pressure, surrounded by expectations they were too young to name. The king had learned to hide uncertainty behind careful language. His sister had learned to cut through it. Whenever courtiers softened bad news, she told him the truth. Whenever the family divided into private camps, she refused to flatter any side. Charles stood alone after the meeting, holding an old photograph of himself beside Anne. He felt pride, but guilt followed quickly. The honor rewarded her loyalty, yet it also dragged her into a struggle she had never asked to lead. He had given his sister authority, but he had also made her the target of every resentment the proclamation created. Camilla returned to her sitting room and dismissed her staff. She opened the document again. The phrase, "first in service to the sovereign," struck harder the second time. The Queen Consort understood that the words did not merely praise Anne. They defined her as the closest working partner to the monarch when the institution faced danger. Camilla closed the file, but the humiliation remained. William sought Catherine before speaking to anyone else. The prince respected his aunt, yet he feared the new authority might place another powerful figure between the reigning king and the future king. Catherine listened as he asked whether Anne had been appointed to protect his path or quietly control it. She reminded him that his aunt had never chased power. Still, William could not ignore the question. Sophie finally supplied the missing truth through a documented account she had kept after 2 earlier family meetings. The trusted confidant revealed that Anne had rejected expanded authority twice. She accepted only after Charles privately warned that the monarchy could face paralysis without her. That word changed everything. Why had the king suddenly feared paralysis? The answer lay inside Windsor Castle, where one hidden incident had nearly exposed the family's deepest weakness. That hidden incident had unfolded only weeks earlier, and once the family understood what happened behind Windsor's closed doors, the emergency proclamation no longer looked ceremonial, it looked unavoidable. Every royal crisis has a moment that later appears inevitable. For this one, it came during a private Windsor strategy meeting when an ordinary disagreement became a test of command. Charles briefly left the room after becoming unwell, expecting his family to continue under established protocol. Instead, competing instructions were issued, engagements were nearly cancelled, and senior staff were left unsure whose authority mattered. By the time Anne entered the chamber, the machinery of monarchy had begun to fracture. Charles had summoned the meeting to settle 3 urgent matters: an approaching state visit, his reduced workload, and the temporary division of royal duties. A state visit is an official visit by a foreign leader, carrying diplomatic importance far beyond ceremony. Any sudden cancellation could embarrass the government, weaken confidence, and suggest that the palace had lost control at the worst possible moment. The king looked exhausted before the discussion had properly begun. He set down his papers, pressed one hand against the table, and quietly asked his physician to accompany him outside. Before leaving, Charles told William and Camilla to complete the schedule. He believed the chain of command was obvious. That belief would soon haunt him. Camilla acted first. She instructed staff to postpone the most demanding engagements, arguing that protecting her husband mattered more than appearances. The queen consort believed she was preventing a deeper crisis. William refused. The prince insisted the program must continue because any retreat would make the monarchy look unstable. He ordered the original schedule restored. The contradiction spread immediately. One group of courtiers followed Camilla. Another waited for William. Neither side wanted to challenge the queen consort, yet neither could ignore the future king. Minutes passed. 2 schedules began circulating. The palace was no longer managing a state visit. It was exposing a struggle over authority. Anne entered and understood the danger at once. She took both folders, closed them sharply, and ordered everyone to stop speaking. The Princess Royal told William that determination without coordination could become recklessness. Then she turned to Camilla and said protection, without clear authority, could create the very damage she feared. The mistake had already escaped the room. A foreign delegation received a cancellation notice for a major reception. Anne immediately ordered the message recalled, contacted the diplomatic office, and restored the original engagement with only minutes to spare. One delay would have transformed family confusion into an international humiliation. Charles returned before anyone noticed him. The king remained outside the doorway and watched Anne take control. He saw William accept her decision. He saw staff obey without hesitation. He saw Camilla fall silent as the crisis ended. That evening, Charles summoned his constitutional secretary, an advisor who helps the monarch act within established royal rules. He asked whether a new office could be created above family rivalry but beneath the sovereign. Yet when Camilla discovered that the Windsor incident had been used to justify Anne's elevation, her silence ended, and the family's private unease became a direct confrontation between husband and wife. The confrontation came after midnight, long after the proclamation had been locked inside the royal archives. Camilla entered Charles's private study without an aide, closed the door, and placed a copy of the document on his desk. There was no ceremonial language between them now. She asked one question. Why had the Windsor failure become her punishment and Anne's reward? Charles did not deny the accusation. He simply told her the crown required certainty. Camilla remained standing. No private secretary, advisor, or relative waited nearby to soften the argument. The queen consort wanted the king to hear every word without protection. She pointed to the title, First Royal of Britain, and said it could never be dismissed as an administrative role. meaning a position created only to manage duties. To the public, Anne would now appear to be the most trusted woman in the monarchy. Charles tried to hold the conversation inside the language of duty. He said the title did not weaken his wife, nor did it place his sister above her personally. The king insisted that Anne had accepted a burden, not claimed a victory. Camilla heard the explanation, but she also heard what he refused to say. Her anger finally broke through. Camilla pressed both hands against the desk and told Charles, "You did not appoint an office. You chose her over me." The queen consort waited for him to reject the accusation. He looked away instead. That silence wounded her more deeply than any direct answer could have done. Charles defended Anne with sudden force. He said his sister had never asked for power and had twice rejected greater authority. The monarch reminded Camilla that the crown was an institution, meaning the structure of duties and rules that must survive beyond one marriage or one generation. Loyalty to a spouse, he told her, could not automatically become command over that institution. The king then opened a confidential government record, a restricted file documenting decisions that could affect ministers or foreign relations. He showed Camilla the recalled cancellation sent during the Windsor breakdown. Had Anne not intervened, officials could have demanded a formal explanation of why the palace had issued conflicting orders. Camilla stared at the final page. Her handwritten approval appeared beneath the instruction to postpone the engagement. She had acted to protect Charles, but the record proved that her order had overridden established procedure. The queen consort had not intended chaos, yet her decision had created it. Her humiliation hardened into something colder. Camilla removed the royal brooch from her coat and set it beside the proclamation. She told Charles that if Anne was expected to lead the family, then the family must decide whether it still required a queen consort beside the king. Charles did not reach for the brooch. Camilla's threat forced the palace to confront a deeper question. Had Charles merely honored his sister, or had he created an authority powerful enough to reshape the monarchy around Anne? The words "First Royal" sounded ceremonial, but the sealed annex attached to the proclamation revealed something far greater. Anne had been granted the power to coordinate the working family, approve emergency representation, resolve conflicts between royal households, and speak directly to government officials when the king could not. She could not replace the sovereign or outrank the heir. Yet in the uncertain space between them, she had become the person capable of making the monarchy move. Anne understood the danger hidden inside that power. The sealed annex was an additional confidential section explaining exactly how the proclamation would work. It allowed her to summon senior royals, assign urgent duties, settle disputes between palace offices, and approve a single plan when competing instructions threatened public confidence. But it also set clear limits. She could not change the succession, exercise the king's constitutional powers, or interfere with William's future authority. William still needed answers. The prince asked Anne to meet him privately in the library, then closed the door before speaking. He wanted to know whether her new role gave her the right to supervise his household. The future king respected his aunt, but he could already imagine courtiers using her title to delay his decisions, or place another layer of command between him and the throne. Anne heard the fear beneath his careful words. She pushed the annex across the table and told William to read every restriction. Her position, she said, existed to protect his inheritance, not occupy it. The Princess Royal promised she would never build a personal court, gather loyalists around herself, or treat emergency authority as permanent influence. William read the pages slowly. He relaxed only when he reached the clause preventing Anne from overruling him on matters connected to succession. The prince finally looked up and told her that trust would depend on action, not promises. She accepted the warning without offense. The most sensitive clause came next. Charles had created a continuity council, a small emergency group responsible for keeping royal duties moving during a crisis. Anne, William, Edward, and Sophie held permanent places. Camilla did not. That omission carried a brutal message. The queen consort remained beside the king, but she was outside the inner group controlling emergency decisions. Sophie understood the insult immediately, while Edward feared the new council could deepen the family divide it was supposed to contain. The constitutional secretary then confirmed the final surprise through a documented account of the drafting meetings. Anne herself had demanded that the title carry no inheritance, political power, extra wealth, or automatic privilege. She had accepted only after ensuring it could never become a rival throne. Then her first emergency file arrived. Several members of Camilla's household had rejected revised orders and threatened to abandon a major national ceremony. Anne had promised that her new authority would never become personal, but the first test placed her directly against Camilla's household, and this time, every decision would have an immediate consequence. By sunrise, the proclamation was no longer a private family matter. New reporting lines were delivered to royal offices, schedules were rewritten, and senior staff were ordered to recognize Anne's authority during emergencies. The change appeared orderly on paper. Inside the palace, it felt like an earthquake. Some courtiers welcomed the clarity. Others saw an unforgiving transfer of influence. And in Camilla's household, one refusal threatened to turn private resentment into public disorder. Anne moved quickly. She ordered one consolidated schedule for Charles, Camilla, William, Catherine, and every other working royal. A consolidated schedule was a single official program designed to stop separate households from issuing conflicting instructions. It mattered because the monarchy could not afford another Windsor breakdown, especially during a national ceremony watched by ministers, diplomats, and the public. Camilla received the revised program during breakfast. She read Anne's signature at the bottom, folded the page once, and placed it beside her cup. The Queen Consort said quietly that even her movements now required her sister-in-law's approval. Her senior aide immediately objected, insisting that she could not appear to take ceremonial instructions from the Princess Royal. The refusal spread through the office. The aide rejected a revised arrival time, meant to prevent Charles from facing several exhausting appearances without rest. A national ceremony was a formal public event, representing the crown before the country. So one visible disagreement could expose the family's private divisions. Camilla listened as her staff argued that accepting Anne's order would reduce her household to a secondary office. Anne confronted the aide before the dispute could reach the press. She explained that the change protected the king and preserved the ceremony. The Princess Royal gave him one final opportunity to cooperate. He refused again, claiming that Camilla's dignity mattered as much as Charles's health. Anne removed him from the planning team immediately. The consequences came fast. 3 members of Camilla's office prepared a joint resignation letter, convinced the proclamation had stripped their household of influence. If the document leaked, it would suggest that the Queen Consort's own staff had rebelled against the new royal order. The palace would not look disciplined. It would look divided. Camilla read the unsigned letter in silence. Then she tore it in half. The Queen Consort told her staff that no one would use her disappointment to embarrass Charles. She admitted the new arrangement had wounded her, but she would not allow personal resentment to weaken the king. Her loyalty had survived the humiliation. Charles learned what she had done through a written report from his private secretary. The king reread the final paragraph twice. For the first time since signing the decree, he wondered whether Camilla had been judged too harshly. That doubt led him to summon Anne privately before the title could be announced to the country. For the first time since signing the decree, Charles wondered whether certainty had come at too high a personal cost, and only Anne could tell him whether the crown's solution was becoming the family's deepest wound. There were no uniforms, advisors, or sealed documents when Charles met Anne at Windsor. Only a brother and sister sat opposite each other in the room where their mother had once corrected their childhood arguments. The king admitted that Camilla's humiliation had affected him more deeply than expected. Anne listened without interruption. Then she asked the question no courtier would dare raise. Had Charles created the title to protect the monarchy or to avoid making difficult decisions himself? Charles dismissed the final aide and closed the door himself. The proclamation remained untouched on a side table, stripped of ceremony for the moment. A proclamation was a formal royal declaration carrying the monarch's authority. But here it became something simpler. Proof of a decision that had wounded his wife, unsettled his son, and placed his sister at the center of a family struggle. The king admitted that Windsor had frightened him. He had watched rival households issue competing commands while his strength failed, and he had seen how quickly uncertainty could become paralysis. Charles told Anne that one more mistake could have damaged diplomatic trust and exposed the monarchy as divided at its core. Anne did not comfort him. The Princess Royal said fear could explain a decision, but it could not excuse every consequence. She warned Charles that he could not use her as a shield against difficult conversations with Camilla or William. If the title existed because he lacked the courage to confront his wife and son, she would surrender it before the country heard her name attached to it. Charles reached toward the proclamation but stopped before opening it. The king said Anne was the only person who had repeatedly carried the crown's burden without asking what reward would follow. He needed her because she had never confused service with possession. Anne finally offered a condition. She would remain only if Camilla was protected from public humiliation, and William was formally named her partner in every major continuity decision. The future king, she insisted, could never appear subordinate to an office created during his father's reign. The queen consort must never be presented as the woman displaced by it. Charles opened the document and added a final passage. The revised declaration stated that the first royal would serve beside the heir and in support of Camilla, never above either of them personally. An amendment was a formal change added to an official text, and this one transformed the title from a weapon of hierarchy into a promise of cooperation. Anne watched her brother sign. Then she asked to meet Camilla alone. That private conversation changed the meaning of the proclamation. But the country had not yet seen the document, and once the palace gates opened, the entire world would deliver its own verdict. At 9 o'clock the next morning, the proclamation was released. Within minutes, broadcasters interrupted regular programs. Palace correspondents gathered outside Buckingham Palace, and crowds began forming against the railings. The title was unprecedented, but the public understood its message immediately. Anne had been recognized as the monarchy's anchor in a period of uncertainty. Yet the reaction was not universally celebratory. For some, it represented stability. For others, it exposed how fragile the royal family had become. Buckingham Palace published the full declaration, including the revised passage protecting William and Camilla. The proclamation was the king's formal public order, while the added explanation made clear that Anne's role centered on service, coordination, and continuity. She would support the heir, not replace him, and assist the queen consort rather than publicly diminish her. The story spread with astonishing speed. Broadcasters called it the most important change to working royal authority in decades. They focused on Anne's record, Charles's urgency, and the hidden Windsor breakdown that had forced the decision. Every discussion returned to one question: why had the monarchy needed an emergency commander at all? Anne watched the coverage alone. A presenter called the Princess Royal the monarchy's emergency commander, and praised her as the only figure capable of controlling the family. She switched off the television immediately. The words sounded like victory, yet she felt no triumph. Every compliment aimed at her seemed to deepen the humiliation already carried by Camilla, and the uncertainty troubling William. Camilla faced a harsher test. The queen consort entered a scheduled reception, knowing every camera was searching for anger, distance, or defeat. A correspondent asked what Anne's appointment meant for the family. She paused, controlled her breathing, and answered clearly, "The king has chosen duty, and she has never failed it." Outside Buckingham Palace, one image captured the nation's divided mood. A newspaper vendor raised a front page, showing Anne beneath the headline, "The Crown's First Defender." The crowd applauded when the royal standard, the flag showing the monarch was present, rose above the palace. Others remained silent, staring at the headline as though it confirmed how close the institution had come to losing control. Then speculation met reality. Anne arrived at Camilla's reception without warning. The Princess Royal approached the entrance, stepped aside, and allowed the queen consort to enter first. Camilla stopped, turned back, and waited. Neither woman spoke. Then they walked forward together. The gesture was deliberate. Anne showed that authority did not require humiliation. Camilla showed that dignity did not require resistance. Their unity calmed the palace, but the story was not yet complete. The proclamation still required formal acceptance before Charles, William, Camilla, and the assembled royal family. The cameras had captured unity, but the final truth would be revealed inside the palace, where Anne had to decide what kind of first royal she intended to become. The final ceremony contained none of the grandeur many expected. There was no coronation, no new crown, and no throne waiting for Anne. Instead, Charles stood with his family in the same chamber where the crisis had begun. Before him rested the amended proclamation and a simple silver insignia representing service to the sovereign. Anne approached without celebration. She understood that the title did not elevate her above those she loved. It bound her more tightly to their survival. Charles opened the document and began to read. The amended proclamation was the final version of the king's official declaration, changed to protect the authority of William and the dignity of Camilla. The monarch confirmed that Anne's role would exist only during his reign. It carried no inherited privilege, no private fortune, and no claim to the throne. It demanded responsibility. Nothing more. The new structure was unmistakable. Anne would coordinate emergency royal operations whenever confusion threatened the institution. William would remain the heir and future sovereign, with his path untouched. Camilla would continue beside Charles as queen consort, never displaced from her personal or ceremonial position. Catherine, Edward, and Sophie listened as the balance finally became clear. This was not a transfer of the crown. It was a shield built around it. Anne stepped forward but did not reach for the silver insignia. The Princess Royal turned first toward Camilla. She said she had never accepted the title to stand between a husband and wife, nor to turn one woman's loyalty into another woman's humiliation. She had accepted because no private wound, however painful, could be allowed to endanger public duty. Camilla moved before Charles could respond. The queen consort took the insignia and fastened it to Anne's coat herself. Her hands trembled for only a moment. Then she met her sister-in-law's eyes and said, "Then carry it for all of us." William stepped forward next. The prince promised that when his own reign came, Anne's service would be remembered not as a challenge to succession, but as the force that protected it during its most uncertain passage. The future king understood that she had not stood in his way. She had kept the road before him from collapsing. Charles finally spoke without the protection of formal language. The king told the family that the proclamation had never meant Anne was loved more than the others. It recognized that she had spent her life proving love through duty, whenever words had failed. Anne accepted the title, but refused the ceremonial bow prepared for her. She asked everyone to stand beside her instead. Camilla joined first. William followed. Catherine, Edward, and Sophie completed the line as Charles sealed the proclamation. King Charles had named Anne the first royal of Britain, but its power came from placing her at the family's center without placing her above it. Her reward was not glory, it was responsibility, and the monarchy survived because she accepted it. Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you in next one.